Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Rajiv Chakshi. I'm a customer engineer based out of New Jersey. And today I'll be working with John to share some of the common questions that we get asked on the field about Microsoft Teams. So go ahead, John, introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm John Wynn. I am your customer success manager for mainly New England, right, and Michigan. So I cover those states, and I'm just happy to be here with you guys today. All right, so let's go ahead and get started here. Let me just send over some content. So our section for you guys, and I will just start the slideshow, right, is commonly asked questions that we have in, that comes across our desk all the time. So we're going to address some of those here, and we're going to do this in a question, like in a conversational aspect. So if you guys have any questions, feel free to add them as well, right? So let's go ahead and get started. These are some of the questions that we're gonna
Sure.
hit, and I'll let you take it away.
Yeah, John. Yeah, John. So many times I get asked, why does my AirPod, work sometimes in Microsoft Teams, but does not work other times? Is there any list of supported devices that work with Microsoft Teams? John, can you educate us on
Yeah,
that?
good question, right? I get that question a lot too, right? And the question comes in because, there's devices that you can obviously add in as a Bluetooth, right? And sometimes it'll capture it and it works really well. And sometimes even though you enable the Bluetooth, the device doesn't work as well, right? Apple AirPods is one of those, right? Sometimes they work really well with your device and sometimes they don't. And why is that, right? Well, in the Teams meeting environment, there are headsets that are made for our Teams meetings, right? One of the things I will say to you is, uh, there's going to be times when you use something that is not kind of like made for the meetings, but it works, right? And one of the things I will say is always go to your device settings, right, and check it, because just like this example I'm showing up here, I've got 3 different devices that I've hooked up to my laptop, right? I've got a hands-free headset. I've got this Jabra Evolve puck that I can use for like conference calls, and then I have my regular mic and speakers from my laptop, right? And so if it picks it up, you'll see it as a listing here. Now, if you don't see it listed here, therein lies why your headset may or may not work, right? It's not syncing very well. So I would say this is one of the things that I would check, right? Now, again, like I said, if it's not made for Teams meetings, you're going to have varied experiences. Sometimes they work really well, sometimes they do not, and it all has to do with, like the buffering and if it works properly. I've listed, List, right? One of the most popular brands out there that is a partner to us, Jabra, right? So Jabra headsets, they make them for over the ear, on the ear, inside the ear. Like they have all the different types of models you can pick from, wired, wireless. But I think no matter what product you pick, one thing that you should look at, does it work for your platform? Is it one of those that are made for your platform, right? So over here, if you look at this on their site, it's not just for Teams. They actually, work for a lot of different platforms. But then you look down here and they said, hey, look, we've tested this device with a long list of platforms and are Microsoft Teams certified. So you're looking for that if you're looking for something very specific for Teams meetings. So um, yeah, great question.
Yeah, that's awesome. Thank you for enlightening us.
Yeah, I hope
Definitely.
that helps. Yeah.
Yes. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, I can. Go for it.
Okay, cool. Yeah, the other question I get asked a lot is about breakout rooms. So
Yeah.
why is it that I cannot randomly assign people to breakout rooms?
So I think most of this question goes around when you have a breakout room. When you first create a breakout room, it gives you this page, right, where you can select a number of rooms. Can you randomly assign people or manually assign people? But once you create it, you get this on the side here where they broke it out for you. And then people are starting to ask like, hey, but I really didn't want 6 rooms. I only wanted like 4 rooms, or I only wanted 3 rooms, or you know what, I really wanted to manually assign them, or this list here didn't fit what I wanted. And then they want to come back to that first page to how to create it again, and they don't know where to look, right? And I think they just think once it's created, it's one and done. It's not really. So when you're in this breakout room and you see on the side here where it says breakout rooms and it has the 3 little ellipses, you can actually go click on the 3 ellipses here. It'll drop down a menu for you, and then you see where it says room settings, right? Um, I'm sorry, not room settings, recreate rooms. So when you click on recreate rooms, it'll bring you back to that first page you saw. And then from there, you can select how many rooms you want and whether you want to automatically assign them or manually assign them, right? So that's a really good way of resetting the Teams meeting rooms and getting that functionality back. Now, I also have a bonus for you. One of the new things that came out to us recently was the ability to set a timer. And I shared with you as a bonus because guess what? It's not like blatantly obvious right in front of you. You actually have to click on room settings. So when you click on the 3 ellipses next to breakout rooms, 3 dots or the ellipses next to the breakout rooms, click on room settings. Under settings, you actually have a timer that you can use. So you can set your room to 15 minutes, 30 minutes, or however long you want to stay in there. And there's also another functionality that allows you to give the participants the ability to go back to the main room when they're done or to stay put, right? So that's an extra bonus for you guys there.
Awesome. That's great news that we have this timer function now. That's bonus. Absolutely love it.
Yep, just gave you a little bonus since we were there, since this is a little hidden.
Thank you. Thank you. Awesome. Next question I get a lot is why is my large gallery mode grayed out?
Yeah, that's an interesting one. I get that from my customers a lot, right? And one of the things that people don't understand is our default is 3x3, and it's to help you guys with a better meeting experience, right? You don't want it to always look in a large gallery view when you only have a small amount of people pop up. So it kind of stays grayed out unless certain criteria are hit. Now, what are the criteria that you need for this to light up? You got to have more than 9 folks on the call. So, 10 or more. But then the second criteria that also have to be met is that 10 or more of those people are sharing their cameras. Now, if those 2 criteria are met, then you can select large gallery view. And when you select that, then you can have up to 49 people, right? For 7x7. So I would also say this as well. It's like, you do have to enable this. It's not native. And some people think, oh, this is a native functionality that you should always just get like 79 off the bat. It's your 3x3 or 9 to screen is what is the default, right? So you do have to turn this on.
Awesome. That's a great call out that we need more than 9 people on the call and more than 9 people to have the video turned on before that gallery mode would work. Awesome. Thanks.
Yeah, I would also add to this too. Sometimes people don't have 10 to a call, right? And don't have 10 showing their cameras, and it lights up and they're like, oh, wait, I thought you said those 2 criteria have to be met to see it, right? Well, sometimes we have a little, I wouldn't call it a glitch, but sometimes if you enable together mode, right? Sometimes by enabling together mode, it automatically toggles on your large gallery view, right? So just letting you know that could happen as well.
Okay, cool. Together mode, yes.
Yeah, sometimes even if you don't have 10, right, you enable together mode, and sometimes your large gallery lights up and you're like, oh, look, I have this now, right? Yeah, that happens from time to time.
Great. Thank you. The other question I get a lot is also, why is my microphone grayed out in certain meetings?
Yeah, that's a really good question. It has to do with understanding the different roles that we have within a meeting and the control sets that, as the organizer of a meeting, they have around that, right? So one of the things that I'll just reiterate now, I think just to help people out, is we really have three major roles within a meeting. Right? You have the organizer who creates the meeting. So you usually have one of those, and when you see that next to their name, that means you cannot flip them to an attendee or can change their role, right? Like they are kind of like the boss since they created that meeting, right? So you have that. You have a second role, which is a presenter role. Now, presenter roles can do a lot of what the organizer can do, minus a couple of key functionalities, right? As a presenter, they can turn on their camera. They can also share content, right? Share their screen. They can hit the record button. They can demote folks. They can mute others. They can let people into the lobby, right? So presenters are kind of like your second tier of control sets. And then you have attendees. Now, as attendees, there's a lot of functionalities that's turned off for you. Like for instance, you can't just share content. Like the share content button is going to be grayed out for you. So if you have your share content icon as well grayed out, then like you're an attendee, right? So one of the things also as an attendee you lose is the ability to record. Now, if you're a guest, you'll never have the ability to record. But if you're inside of the organization and you look down and you can't record a meeting, that's probably because you're an attendee. Now, one of the functions that just came out, or feature set that just came out, Teams, a couple months back, was the ability to take away the mic of attendees. Like the organizer can hard mute you. What does it mean by hard mute you? That means take away your mic, and that's when your mic turns gray with a circle. Like remember the old movies where they had the circle with slash on it, meaning like you can't enable it. So that's what you'll see on your mic when somebody makes you an attendee and takes away your mic. Now, when that happens, you also should see a banner that says, hey, your mic has been disabled. Please raise your hand if you want to speak or add something like that. It'll have a banner that says something like that, right? So that's the reason why it might be grayed out. Now, of course, right, there's another situation now since we have overflow. And if you are one of those that come in after having 1,000 in a meeting, you're like the 1,001st person or something like that, or you're in situations and the state has turned on overflow mode, then also your camera and your mic would be disabled, right? You're in a view only mode. So those are the two reasons why you would have that grayed out. I would say if you are grayed out like that, use the chat if they enabled it, right? And or raise your hand, and the organizer or the presenter will know to allow you to have your mic again.
Awesome, great tips. And I think I saw recently a feature where there was a mute all attendees button, right? In the past, there was mute all, which would also mute the presenter. But I recently saw a new feature where there was a separate button just to mute all attendees. Is that correct?
Yes, there is. It's under the attendee. So if you look over here, there's an attendee button. There's a three dots for ellipses. When you look that, you can. There's a quick way for the organizer to like hard mute everybody. But another feature set that came out to us a couple of weeks ago was the ability for presenters to demote attendees and hard mute individual attendees instead of doing it across the board for everybody. And then by unclicking on an individual person, they can also give back the mic. So that's a new feature that came in that's really nifty, and I think a lot of my customers enjoy having that kind of freedom instead of an all take away the hard mute for everybody versus I can now have singular control over that, and presenters can help me with that. So that's kind of neat.
Yeah, the mute all is definitely a great feature because in the pandemic scenario, we're all working from
Correct.
home, and there could be distractions from attendees. That's great.
Well, that's basic going back to our netiquette, right? So
Yes,
when you first come into a meeting, one of the netiquette rules is to make sure that you turn off your mic and turn off your camera unless you have a meeting that specifies turning on your camera, and then when you're speaking to use your mic, and then when you're done to mute yourself. And that also comes down to call quality, right? Making sure that you don't have echoes and such, and the meeting it sounds good.
great points about netiquette.
Yeah,
Okay,
thanks for
one
bringing
of
that
the
up.
other, yes, another question I get a lot is why do live captions not work for me?
Yeah, let me get on that. So I got ahead of you there, right? So, um, yeah, live captions should work if everybody is in the same tenant. So if you're in the GCC tenant and everybody's in GCC, everybody should be able to turn on live captions. Same as, if you were in a commercial space, you should be able to turn on your live captions because everybody's in the same tenant. We've got something that we're working on, right? That we're going to hopefully address pretty soon, this issue here. But the reason why sometimes you have live captions, it looks like you can enable it and it doesn't work, is because the web client, because two things, right? Either you've got two different tenants in the same meeting space, like you have a GCC tenant and a commercial tenant in the same space. The one that organized the meeting, those folks from that tenant will have live captions. So if the GCC person scheduled the meeting, all the people on the GCC side should be able to turn on live captions. And then the ones that are from the commercial tenant may not be able to turn on their live captions, right? Again, that's something that we're going to work on and fix so that everybody should be able to enable it. Just a helpful tip, if you know somebody on your team is going to need the live captions, you are going to want to make sure that the meeting that's scheduled is somebody scheduling it from your tenant, right? The second reason is, our web client or our internet site, when you're logging into meetings, they don't have live captions just yet, right? Again, that's also one of those things that is going to come to us pretty soon here, where you can have live captions within that space as well. So if you're using a web client right now, like Chrome or Edge Chromium, you're not going to get live captions right now. And then here's things to consider, right? Like, so how do we fix this? Because this is such an integral part of any kind of meeting space when people need this accessibility tool. So I can share with you a couple things that you could do. Like I said, if you know somebody needs it and you've got multiple tenants coming into meeting, just make sure that the people on your side are scheduling it. But there's also another thing that you can do as well. Use PowerPoint. So I'm using PowerPoint right now to project this for you guys to see. PowerPoint has its own closed captioning thing. So when you show a presentation, the captions automatically show up on the bottom, right? So this is kind of cool. The only thing is that in PowerPoint, it doesn't have user attribution, and user attribution just came out to us in our meeting space, I would say about a couple of weeks ago, right? So now that you have user attribution, you know exactly who's speaking, and that's helpful to know, like, I'm speaking or Rajiv, you're speaking. So you kind of lose out on that, but at least you have closed captions for everybody, right?
Yeah, this is cool. I see that on your PowerPoint slide, you are using that PowerPoint
Yes.
captions. That's amazing. Great.
Yeah, I'm not using the native live captions within
Teams.
live events or Teams, right? So what you're seeing here is this being powered by PowerPoint.
Awesome. Very creative. Cool.
Thanks. Yeah, some of these little tricks, right, that you can use when you really need it.
Yes, cool. One time I was in a meeting with a customer, and I lost access to the chat after the meeting. Is that something that you can help us understand, like when is the chat accessible, and especially in recurring meetings, does that disappear after the meeting?
So, this is one of those also really interesting topics, right? Because, sometimes that's done on purpose. So let's talk about when that happens on purpose, right? So chat's disappearing in recurring meetings or in regular meetings. A new feature set came out to us recently for the organizer. Remember, I told you the three roles, right? As an organizer, you have a lot of control over that meeting, and one of the options you have now is allow chats inside of meetings. So if you disable, because the norm is enabled, right? If you disable chat, nobody in the meeting could have chat. Now, how would you know that? Well, if you go into the chat, you'll see a little message saying that chat has been disabled for this meeting. So you know that that's somebody that's turning it off, right? The other piece of that is that um, some people lose chat after the meeting, and then they're like, "Why is that?" Well, sometimes the organizer can, choose to do chat only within the meeting because people who, don't use Teams very often, they may, people using that persistent chat and it creates a lot of notifications. So to just kind of like keep notifications to a minimum, they may decide to do the chat in meeting only. So I I think that's the first thing you should look at, right? Now, I also know, so I would check that first, but I also know with recurring meetings, one of the issues with recurring meetings is sometimes people would invite folks and then that meeting is very popular, and then they would forward it to where you go over the limit of number of participants per meeting. Like let's say it was 300 or 350, right? So when you start inviting folks and it goes way over that amount, um, chat doesn't work very well, right? It becomes problematic for us. So because you went over that limit of the number of people on there. So some people will come in and they'll have chat and other people's don't, right? So that's one of those instances where you can do a couple of things to try to fix that. Number one, you can leave the meeting, then come back in. Sometimes that simple reset will get you your chat back. I think if it's persistent enough where a lot of folks are losing chat, and for sure that you've got a meeting and it's been forwarded so many times and has been recurring for so many times that you just need to reset it. So I would create um, a new meeting invite, right, that recurs, and then usually that will fix it, where you don't have so many folks on that invite. Or third, if you really love your recurring meeting and you haven't gone over 300, I'd get your IT folks to put in a help desk ticket so that we can kind of look at it and fix, right?
Cool, cool. So this slide has the number 300. That reminds me of another feature. Isn't that
Right.
number higher now? Is it 1000
It
now?
is.
Okay,
Yeah. So I say that because, you know, there are folks who created these meeting invites, recurring invites from a while back, right? And so that's why I said that. But right now we do have 1,000 with overflow. So um, that
cool.
that's recent.
Awesome. All right, so
Thanks for
can
that.
yeah, that was something I wanted to bring up because that's a new feature that people might not be aware of.
Yeah, our large meeting experiences. I mean, that's huge, right? Because there's
Yeah,
certain times when you have an organization-wide or an agency-wide meeting, and you guys are just a little bit over 300. Now we give you the ability to do that, and it's just really nice. I think a lot of my customers are happy with that. But how often do we actually go over 300? It doesn't occur as much as people think, right? It's a little bit
cool,
more rare, but it's nice to have.
cool. Yeah, so I have a whiteboard question, but I'll wait for that question. I have one more question before the whiteboard question.
Sure,
Uh,
sure.
can you tell us how people can access To-Do and bookings if there is no tile for that in the app launcher?
Yeah, let me just share my screen here. And so, the interesting thing is when I created this and those questions came about, guess what? Today, State of Maine told me that they now have to do as part of their waffle. So this is what we're talking about with this waffle, right? As part of your apps that you can see. And then you come in here, and if you don't have it, you can click on more apps, right? And when you click on more apps, you see everything that's available to you. Now, I'm in a commercial space. You're not going to see everything that I have, right? but you will see that what you have access to, and now To-Do is part of that. So it wasn't, that was just state of Maine was really happy to see this in their waffle or their list of apps. If you are one of those that still do not see To-Do as part of one of your apps up here, you do have access to it part of your licensing, right? So what you would do is you open up a browser and type in todo.microsoft.com, right? Click on that, and it would take you here, and then just get started. And of course, sign in, right? So once you sign in, it will take you, see, it's asking for my credentials, but once I sign in, I should be able to come right into the To-Do space and work within it. Give it a second. My computer's just slightly slow. We've been having a lot of wind in my area, but see, it takes you to your To-Do page. Another way to access this as well that some folks don't know or do know is to go into Outlook on the web client, right? So if you go into your web client over here, guess what? You have a little To-Do icon, and if you click it, it'll take you to the same place.
Awesome.
So this is kind of nice too, right?
Yeah, sometimes I guess that tile or the icon does not show up in the app launcher because the rollout may not be complete for GCC.
Yeah, and that too, right? But I was excited to see, like, State of Maine saying that it was actually in the app launcher. So maybe that's the case that they're rolling it out for everybody, which is really good news, right?
Cool. All right, so now the most popular question: when is whiteboard coming to GCC?
So whiteboard been pushed back a little bit, right? So whiteboard is coming to us, but it is going to be end of June to middle of July kind of rollout. And you guys know, sometimes with our rollouts, it takes a little bit of time to get out to everybody, but that's the timeline it's slated for. I would say, be patient with that one. I know that team had to revamp their whiteboard, and so it's going to take a little bit of time to get that up and running to you guys. But hopefully it'll come out to us in mid-June, end of June, July, early July timeframe.
Yeah, definitely the GCC rollout's lagging behind because of all
It
the
is.
FedRAMP and other approvals that we need to work through.
Yeah, I agree with you. The only thing I would say about that is whiteboard, has been slated to come out, a couple times, and we've rolled that back. So I can understand the frustration. Just be a little patient with us. We're working hard on trying to get that out.
Awesome, John. You have really shared a lot of features and tips that we can all benefit from, and these common questions are really helpful. Thank you so much.
Yeah, you're welcome. Let me leave you with one other tip before I move off and open up to questions here. A lot of times when I'm presenting, people are always asking me, "Hey, John, you see your mouse? How did you change the color or the size of that?" Right? Because this is one of those things that are really helpful. Well, for me personally, to see what's on my screen, but especially when I'm demoing stuff or showing things, it's easier to follow along when I have that larger mouse. You can actually do that over here in settings. So if you come into your Windows icon, go into settings, go under ease of access, right? And then under vision, there's a mouse pointer. So you come to the mouse pointer, guess what? There's all these colors. Now, my wife would look at me kind of funny. I do like pink, but she's like, "No, John, don't use pink." And I was, I don't mind using pink, but she's like, "Do blue. You'll do better with blue." So I kept to that blue. But you can also change the pointer size. You see how it's just an easy click of a button, and you can see it go live. So then you can see what kind of size works best for you, right? I like the large ones just because everybody can see it a little easier. Same thing with the colors, you can just easily pick from what is the defaults up here, but you can also customize your color as well. I thought that's a neat one since a lot of people asked me. And you guys just did accessibility a second ago. We have our accessibility tools here, so it's kind of cool to see that all in one place.
That's a
Go
great
ahead.
tip as
I
well.
know there was a question out there. Go for it.
All right, do we have any questions? Let's see.
So John.
Yeah.
And Rajiv. So I'm just gonna go ahead and put you on the big screen so we don't see a blue screen.
Of course.
So one of the questions I have is, can you share some best practices around sharing screen? When do you think is a good time to share your desktop versus when do you think is a good time just to share a browser or just a presentation? Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, that's a really good question because a lot of my folks ask the same question too. It all comes down, and this is where I love Teams, right? Because we always think about security. One of the things that I will say to you is, for me, when I'm demoing, I'm switching between a lot of different pieces. Like maybe I'll show you something that's on my Windows environment, or maybe I'll show you something in Excel or Outlook or Teams, and I'm like switching between a lot of different processes. I would share my desktop in that case because it's just easier for me to switch from one thing to the next without having to stop sharing and resharing. So that's when I would do that. Now, I would be very careful when I do that, that I don't have anything on my desktop that is maybe confidential or something that I don't want to like unintentionally share, right? Because as you're clicking through something, sometimes something will pop up and it wasn't meant for the eyes of everybody. So I would say do that cautiously, right? Know what you have open and prepare yourself before you come onto the meeting. So when you are sharing that way, that you're not unintentionally sharing something. Now, when you want to share a specific document, that's really awesome because when you do that, it even if you accidentally put something in front of that document, the end users won't see that. Like your other participants in the meeting won't see anything you put up except for the document that you shared with them. So that's really powerful because even if you had something you accidentally put it up, nobody will see it except for the PowerPoint or the Word doc or whatever you're using is up on the screen. So I would use that when I want a secure kind of like I intentionally only want to share one thing. So that's another reason why I would do that. Now, you also now have the ability to share a specific screen, right, with somebody. So I have 3 monitors. Well, my laptop and 2 monitors, right? And sometimes I want the middle screen to be my um, kind of like my focus monitor. I could share just that screen as well. And again, be very careful that you're putting things up that you intentionally want people to see.
I think one more thing I would add is in a low bandwidth scenario when customer has a poor internet connection, then at that point, instead of sharing the whole desktop, I would share just a window.
Talking about that and talking about like neat tricks and questions that people ask, like, hey, that's another one. Like, my bandwidth is really low, and when people share stuff, it gets kind of choppy, especially when you're sharing a PowerPoint and then other people are sharing camera feeds, right? You do know that there is an option within Teams meetings. If you hit the 3 ellipses, right, go all the way to the bottom, and you have the ability to stop all incoming video. So then that helps your bandwidth as you're viewing a PowerPoint or such. It's a really good tip too.
Thank you, John.
You're welcome.
Rajiv, I mean, this is to you both, but I'll go ahead and present this to you first. How would you recommend if someone wants to have a private chat with just one person, but they're in a meeting? Usually that gets confusing for some users as far as chatting in a meeting versus chatting privately. Or even John, if you have already a Teams container opened, can one of you address what are best practices or differentiating between a meeting chat versus a private chat?
Yeah, the private chat is something you would work with one-on-one, right? So if you are, let's say, right now I'm in a live event and somebody, basically I'm presenting, so they would not be able to, if I set it to do not disturb, they would not be able to chat with me, right? But if I do not, if I set my availability as available, then they would be able to chat one-on-one with me. So while I'm on the meeting and chatting with, the attendees in the meeting, I can also have a one-on-one chat with other people.
Yeah, I'll add to that too. I think that's a really good point of making sure that you're looking at people's availability before sending off chats to folks or calling them, right? You guys know that one of the great functionalities that came out, I mean, we have all these new functionalities all the time, but when we were able to pop out chats, that was the biggest thing, right? So if you're in a regular meeting chat and you wanted to have a private chat with somebody, you're limited in space. You might want to just pop out that chat, right? And when you pop out that chat, you can have a conversation with somebody separately, and that could be on another window. That's a really good way of doing that as well. Now, can you pop out that and pop out your meeting chats? I think that's one of those things that kind of cool, right? Like you could do as well.
Yeah, I was going to ask John, are you able to demo how you could pop out a chat, please?
Yeah, I can. Let me just share my screen again. Sorry, guys. So I'm going to share my desktop again. Here we go. And I didn't create a environment, so sorry about that. And let me just go ahead and share this content.
If you go ahead and share your screen, I can share the content for you.
Yeah, I shared. Okay. And then just share that content. Here we go.
Yep.
So popping out can be pretty easy here. If you come over here to any one of your chats, let's say I have a chat with Chris Fitzpatrick, who is, one of the guys that I love talking with from time to time. You see this little pop-up button? It's just an icon here. And if you hover over it, it says pop out chat. And when you click on it, it actually opens up in another window. Did you guys know you can snap things too? So if you go like to the right or left of the screen, you can snap it in place. I can't snap it because this is my middle monitor, right? But if I come to a monitor and I snap it to the right, it'll take half the space of my screen. But this is what I mean by popping out. Now, how many can I pop out? Oh my goodness, I can go over here and maybe Nicholas Allen, I want to pop out that chat. And here it goes. And then I can do maybe Brenton over here and I can pop out that chat. And when I do that, possibilities are endless, right? So then watch this. I'm gonna minimize that, and look, I've got 3 different pop-out chats with 3 different people. It's kind of cool, like different windows for it.
Yeah, that's really cool. And this is also one of the features that were very popular in Skype for Business, right? A lot of people love, and that we did not have, right away in the government community cloud. So having this definitely allows to have it allows multitasking. So just to keep in mind, if you are in a meeting, whatever that you share in the meeting chat is visible to all participants. So if you do want to have an individual or private chat, to go ahead and open up your Teams container, click on your chat, and then you could either pop it out or actually just type there. So
yeah, I would agree with you, right? I am ADD, right? So if I see that, I will chase that all day long, every day. So pop-out chats are not my best friends. I will say I will get distracted very quickly.